listening to the Straight to Video podcast with Rob Lane.
We're back. We did it. 2023 is here and we're off and running. Not gonna lie, it seems like ages since the last episode just before Christmas, but it's only been a couple of weeks, so hope you haven't missed the show too much. It's business as normal though again now, with lots of chats already recorded, but today we start the year in fine form with a talk with none other than TV legend Dominic Brunt. Dominic has played the role of Paddy Kirk in the classic soap Emmerdale since 1997, so he's something of a television institution, but what you may or may not know is that he's also a massive horror movie fan, starring in the film Inbred, and also writes, directs and stars in his own movies. He works alongside his wife Joanne with Mitchell Brunt Films, and together they've released films such as Before Dawn, Bait and the wonderfully titled Attack of the Adult Babies. They're regulars on the horror film festival scene, but Dominic came along to chat on the podcast fresh from an appearance on the Loose Women TV show to talk all about his new director role on the film Wolf Manor, which is out this week. A real love letter to the werewolf movies of the past, and from our chat you can hear how excited and proud he is to be involved with it. We also talk about his introductions to horror, his early video shop memories, and we also have a mutual friend in musician Carol Hodge, who Dominic starred in her video for the song Stop Worrying Baby, which you can find on YouTube. This podcast is proudly presented to you in association with Affinity Photo, an incredible piece of photo editing software which I've been using for graphic design the past couple of years. It's used to create the podcast's episode artwork you see each week, and it's an extremely affordable alternative to other programs on the market. Now is a great time to get on board with Affinity Photo and also Affinity Designer and Publisher, so check them out at affinity.serif.com. Wolf Manor, the new film from Dominic Brunt, is available on all digital platforms, but it's all about the physical media when it comes to supporting great new horror films for me, so be sure to pick up your copy from Asda, Morrison's, HMV or Amazon. Right now though, please enjoy my first straight-to-video chat of 2023 with the wonderful Dominic Brunt. How are we doing, sir? You all right?
Can you hear me? Are you? You're right.
Yeah, good, good. Where are you? You in the TV studios?
I am. I'm in the changing rooms in Loose Women. Yeah.
Nice one. As you do. How did it go? All right?
Yeah, it was all right. It was very, very nervous. I really get nervous about them sort of things. It's just because it's live. You've just got to come out with anecdotes that have a beginning, middle and an end, and I'm more of a ranter, really.
Do they prep you for them beforehand? Do they give you like a quick prep on questions, what they're going to ask you?
They do, actually. Some of them don't, but they did. They were all right. They were very good about that. We're going to ask you this, we're going to do this, and we'll cut to this. And if we've got time, we're going to ask you these. And you're like, right, well, thank God you've asked me that because I haven't got a clue. I haven't got an opinion. And you don't want to go on live telling and go, I don't know.
Sure you got some Wolf Manor chat in there with them.
Yeah, it was all right. It was mostly about Wolf Manor. It was quite good. It was specifically for that, and then a bit of Emmerdale at the end, which is great. Absolutely fantastic for us, really, to get the film out there.
A nice one. Well, thank you for dropping in on this one and giving us some of your time, because I know it's crazy busy for you at the moment.
No, it's an honour. It's not. I'm off the rest of this week. That's what the whole thing is. I was just relaxing this week, and it's a good chance to talk about the film, really, and I appreciate you taking the time out for doing the podcast. Thank you.
No worries, no worries. I'm glad we got it hooked up, because you did something with my friend Carol Hodge, a music video a couple of years ago. I played in a band with Carol on and off for a while. She's awesome.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, how did all that come about? Do you remember?
I think it's through mutual friends, so can't quite remember. She asked me to do the video, but we kind of already had lots of mutual friends. So she's a friend of the drummer in Evil Blizzard, he's a solo artist called One Sided Horse.
Right.
And also I'm a massive Crass fan.
Oh, wow.
I'd already met Steve Ignorant at the Rebellion Festival, and so therefore I think I'd met Carol there as well, who my mate Mark Whiteside knows. So it was kind of like she was bound to come into each other's spheres at some point, but she's a mate now.
Yeah, she's super cool. I've not seen her for, when did I see her? I saw her last year. She came out to one of our gigs we were doing, so that was good, but she's got a new album coming out.
Yeah. And also just watching Crass Mark II, she's a brilliant standing for G Voucher, isn't she? She's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's quite an experience, the whole Steve Ignorant Crass thing. It's new to me.
Yeah, quite theatrical.
Yeah, I was like, wow, what's this? This is totally new to what I'm used to seeing music-wise, so I really enjoyed it. It was great.
Yeah, proper hardcore punk at 1,000 miles an hour. hour as well, and just great. All them lyrics and Band from the Roxy I could sing all the way through, and then bringing out all the stuff from Penis Envy that she did. Just brilliant that, Carol's managed to get in and do that stuff, because otherwise they couldn't do it, because that wasn't Steve Ignorant's album at all. But the fact that he's touring with all the Craft songs from all the albums is just brilliant.
Excellent stuff, man. Well, I want to chat a bit about Wolf Manor with you, and also get into some horror stuff if that's cool.
Yeah, anything.
Your new film, which you've directed, Wolf Manor, is set for release in just a few days. How is this time for you as a filmmaker? Is it a mix of excitement, nervousness, or kind of just relief that your work is finally out there to the world?
Well, it's not as nervy as the film festivals. The film festivals are a bit of an experience. So we had our premiere at Fright Fest, which was Leicester Square, and it was a big audience. And because it's the culmination of kind of that whole year of working on your film and then showing it to an audience, your nerves are at the worst time then, because you're sitting watching people react to what you're hoping is what you hoped for, I suppose. The actors and the music and the editing and the pace and everything came together, and the special effects did their job, and that the funny bits hit.
And Fright Fest is the diehards as well, who consume horror content 24/7.
But what they are is very supportive, I think. Even the people that run Fright Fest are very loyal towards British filmmakers. And if you fail at Fright Fest, you failed, I think, because they are right behind you all the way, and they come and support the films. And there's a lot of chatter beforehand, a lot of chatter afterwards. And the regional ones, like Mayhem, we'd never done before. And I absolutely loved Mayhem. The crowd were brilliant. It was 250 people there, crammed in, laughed in all the right places, screamed in all the right places. Absolutely brilliant. But then, Celluloid is across the way, and they're very, very serious with the horror, very like a cinephiles kind of horror audience as well. And it went down well with them. And then we went to Aberystwyth as well. And there was a BFI show, a screening in Manchester, which was great as part of Grimfest. And that was great as well. That was really superb. And that was quite early in the morning. I think that was about 11:30 in the morning. It was still quite busy. And I think what helps is it happened a few years ago when we made a zombie film, the fact that there's a werewolf in it as well. And it's one of the big four of the horror staples. So I think that helped that it was a werewolf film. And also that the werewolf is a good werewolf made by Sean Harrison.
It looks stunning, man. It really does.
It's all right, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no bother making a werewolf film if you're not going to have a good werewolf in it, I don't think.
Definitely. I mean, you'd gone from your ongoing role of Paddy in Emmerdale to starring in the horror movie Inbred, then making your own films as writer and director with your wife Joanne, such as Before Dawn and Bait. But Wolf Manor, you were approached to be the director. What was your reaction to that? Was that kind of flattering and like a stamp of approval as a filmmaker, as in like, hey, people really like and respect what I do. They want me on board for their project as well as me making my own. Was that cool for you?
Yeah, I'd been asked a couple of times before to be involved in things, and I just couldn't get the time off, and Emmerdale has to come first. I'd never ever want to do half of Emmerdale and half a film. I want to do all film or all Emmerdale, and because they're not things you can do by halves, because, well, there's lots of people involved really, and you want to do it professionally and correctly, and I don't want to do the best I possibly can as well, so I don't want to do things by halves. So it's never worked out for like that, which meant we've managed to control our own timings really, and our own scheduling and placing within a certain year. But this time, yeah, it just landed very, very well. And also, I think a few directors have been involved before me, and they wanted to change the script and explain the backstory and explain a bit more depth with the characters. But, I really got it. I read it and I thought it was really, really funny, and it knows itself, and it references the fact that there is no backstory, and backstories are boring in horror films, and characterization is left to the actor, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. And I knew when we got James Fleet, I just thought, this is going to work. If James Fleet gets it and understands that it's referencing the fact that horror films are this, we're laughing, And Pete Wilde, Joel Ferrari, who wrote it, was saying, no, this is horror at its purest form. There's vampires at the beginning, there's werewolves in this house. We rack the 10 people up and we go through them with 10 kills with a special effect for each one. And I was like, that's kind of why I love horror, it really is. So I was absolutely on board with it straight away. I loved it.
Things were already underway on the production, like in the back end of the film. Did you find it easy to drop into your role as the director and find your place within this like already established team? Because I think Joanne came in as producer as well once things were up and running. But did you find yourself slotting in all right? Did you know many other people involved in it?
Well, I mean, it's still breaking down a script into shot lists and camera plans and searching out the location beforehand. So there's not much difference between whether I wrote it or anybody wrote it, really. The process is still exactly the same. But 2 days after I'd been hired, I went down to see Sean Harrison, Paul Booker, and actually met Pete Wilde for the first time, who wrote it, and looked at the the design of the werewolf. So that was great to know that that was going to be all right, because you just didn't want to turn up. And I knew Sean would do it right, because he's just a genius. There was very little to worry about anyway. But also because Jo was producing, it meant that we have a shorthand and I'm not having to make phone calls and Zoom. She's literally on the city at the side of me, So that was great. And Pete Wilde was brilliant in saying, look, you know what you're doing. If you bring on the people that you want to bring on. So lots and lots of people, I'd say a large percentage of the people that we'd worked with before were involved with this again.
Oh, cool.
We'd never worked with Vince Knight and his camera team before, who lit it. But Mark Price, who did Colin and lots of other things, is a dear friend for decades now. And he vouched for him and said, you've got to get this fella on. He's the genius at filming at night and with shadows.
Yeah, because it's all shot at night, right?
Yeah, I'd struggle not to film at night now. I really would. I think it's the way forward. We did Adult Babies years ago, and I think what that suffered with was the fact that it was shot during the day, which is great. Everything was there and everything was bright and lovely, and the white uniforms and white nappies in bright lights. And I'd really struggle to go back to that now, after being able to play with them half shadows and really turn up the tension and having things coming out of the shadows and out the mist. And absolutely brilliant. I really loved playing with that. And Vince Knight, correctly, on Mark's say-so, was brilliant at doing that.
The story takes place on the film set of a vampire movie, but soon turns into a real-life horror film once a werewolf begins attacking the cast and crew. From the trailer, we can already see nods to classic werewolf films such as American Werewolf in London. Is it fun for you, as such a fan of the genre, to have these little nods in your films which other fans can pick up on?
Yeah, I love that aspect of it. Yeah, I really love that. Heavily on American Werewolf in London and other werewolf films, but lots of stuff from the classic horror films and lots of lines that people didn't quite get. I'm just going to leave them there, really. But even The Walking Stick with Lon Chaney and loads of stuff like that. And Joel and Pete are absolute horror nuts, and they knew exactly what they were talking about, and they had a lot of fun writing that together. And I loved that. I wish there was more of that. And even with the playing with the tropes of different people on the set, like the producer, director, lots of actors, actor types, playing with that was brilliant as well. I really loved doing all that, and I think we could have gone heavier with that, but because it was all done with love, you didn't want to be too heavy with that and be spiteful with it. It was more to do with having a gentle poke at people.
You're so accepted in the horror community as one of this country's biggest champions of the genre, but I think people can really see, like you say, your love and passion in everything you do with it.
I certainly don't see myself as that. I think there's much more prolific directors and better placed people working in bigger budgets than that. I feel like I'm a little nerd that is battling away, getting the budgets together for films that we love, really. That's where I feel my place is. Whether it moves up from that, I don't know, but I'll just keep going because I love doing what I'm doing and I love making horror films. I really love it. And hopefully we can continue doing that.
After being in Emmerdale since, was it 97?
Yeah, 97, yeah.
When your part in Inbred came along in 2011, do you remember the reaction from both your work colleagues and perhaps the Emmerdale fan base? Did it filter through that much into the mainstream? Like, holy shit, wasn't expecting him to be doing this kind of thing. Do you remember much about that time?
Well, I was a huge fan of Alex Shandon's, and when I went for the audition, I took my VHS copy of Cradle of Fear for him to sign, and then he said, let's not do the audition, let's just go to the pub. So we just sat talking about horror for about an hour, and then he rang me shortly afterwards. I think by the time I got home, he said, yeah, do you want to play that part then? I was like, yeah, definitely. So that's how that came about, really, just from an audition and being a fan of Alex's. I think I flattered him into giving me the part, really.
What was the reaction from your Emmerdale castmates?
Well, I don't think the two... if I tweet anything, that's why we've got a separate Twitter thing for Wolf Manor, because before it's just me tweeting stuff about the films. But it kind of falls flat with the Emmerdale lot, because I think Emmerdale and horror films are completely separate. So anything that I post about horror films or anything like that gets about 30 or 40 likes, So, and then if you post about Emmerdale, it gets hundreds. So I've tried to keep it separate now. With any film like with Wolf Manor, it's all specifically for that. But yeah, I do mix the two a little bit, but I'm not sure how much interest comes from Emmerdale fans and whether they are the same sort of people,
No, I mean, because Inbred, that was one of the films that I remember seeing the trailer for and immediately being creeped out just by the trailer. And I know that if I'd seen that as a kid on a trailer on the beginning of a horror video I'd rented in the 80s, I think it would have been like, oh, that's a no-go for me back then. But I mean that in a good way. Sometimes seeing those trailers was like, that's already too much for me. Films like The Stuff or The Hitcher, when I saw those trailers, I was like, nah, this is too much for me as a kid. But but then when you eventually see them, you love it. Were there any films or even trailers or perhaps even a film that someone had told you about at school that you're already a little bit nervous or intrepid about seeing beforehand? Can you remember anything back then that terrified you?
The first horror film I ever saw was From Beyond the Grave, and that was because I stayed at a friend's house and we stayed up as late as we possibly could, and he had access to a telly in his room, so we managed to watch that. And I mean, that was probably 1979, I think, because I would have been 9 years old because we moved away next year, so it was definitely then. But I really, really loved that feeling of being really terrified and almost not being able to look. There's a chap that appears out of a mirror, and I remember being just terrified, but at the same time, knowing it was never going to come out the screen, and I was really safe. But a huge step up from Doctor Who for me, seeing actual blood or, red paint, really,
I think you had a great access to horror films as a kid, because was it your friend Lee, his dad owned a video shop in Accrington when you were growing up?
Yeah, Brian, yeah, he's sadly dead now, but he owned Accrington Video, and they had a massive array of horror films. And I think at the time for the home video, I think that was what people really went for. I remember the horror section being bigger than any other thing, really. There was other things like Last Snows of Spring and Smokey the Bandit that was there, but it didn't interest us at all.
Where was the shop? Was it on a high street or was it just a back street thing? Do you remember?
No, it was on Burnley Road. It was right near the centre as well. It's not there anymore. Funnily enough, the foundations are there, and there's a couple of bits of walls, but it was knocked down, so it's like a derelict building now. But every time I go to Accrington now, I keep seeing it because I don't live there anymore. But when I go there, I look at it thinking, Jesus, all the memories from there. There was a cellar, and he had some pinball games down there as well, and it was brilliant. It's his dad, so we watched a film a night. So we'd rewatch. I mean, I know there are obvious choices, but Dawn of the Dead or Evil Dead, and just on rotation, just loved them to pieces. They were like comfort blankets that if there was no other film to watch, or if that one was shit, or if it was boring, we'd stick one of them on rotation. It was just absolutely brilliant.
Did it become more of a hangout place then, with them having the pinball machines and stuff like that as well? Yeah,
completely, yeah. And all the posters were up on the walls. So we'd either take them back and watch them at ours or at the video shop itself, yeah.
Did your family ever have any problems with you watching 18 certificate films?
No, nobody's families did then, because they didn't know what they were watching, because there was nothing that said PG or X. I mean, you were pretty sure you knew what not to watch, and that was anything that was rude.
Emmanuel or Electric Blue or something like that.
Yeah, you'd stay away from them, and they look boring anyway at that age. So you just wanted to watch. I remember Driller Killer cover, just going, "Oh, that looks horrible. It's really frightening. Let's watch that." Funnily enough, I don't like that sort of spiteful horror. I do like the more comic booky type of horror. I don't really like the torturous side of it. I've never liked Saw, although Saw's got a brilliant twist. You can't fault that. Or Hostel, or the stuff that looks like it's been written by a 14-year-old lad with just people being tortured everywhere. Just not into that at all. I like scares or good special effects.
I mean, stuff like you mentioned, like Dawn of the Dead, I mean, a lot of it is quite monotonous, and which suits the whole tone of the film. I love those kind of films as well.
Yeah, the colours as well, even going into the cellars and everybody being bright blue and then being bitten into, and it be bright red, and for some reason it was just dead attractive, that sort of thing. And it was also you knew it wasn't real, so it was like a celebration of the special effects. And I think I've always been like that. Even Sean Harrison's a friend now, and he's really interested in making it realistic, and it's almost to be applauded when there's a really good special effect. But when somebody comes up to you and goes, "Watch this fight here in the street that's done this," somebody gets punched in the head, and you're like, "That's appalling, that's horrible." I'm no interested in real life violence at all. It repels me hugely. But a good special effect, I just want to stand up and clap.
Yeah. You're a Fangoria fan as well,
yeah,
from back in the day. You'd see all the special effects. I've often said to people, the special effects guys are almost became as big as stars as the stars of the films themselves, because you'd see those names all the time.
Yeah, true. Well, when I went to, my gran and granddad used to live on Coldbath Road in Manchester, and every time I went to their house, we used to go there probably every month, every couple of months, and every time I went there, we used to buy the Fangoria because we could just buy it. It was at the newspaper shop there.
It was hard to find back over here in the UK.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I don't think you could get it in Accrington. I never found it in a tape shop here. So I had a collection at my gran and granddad's house, and my granddad didn't care about that. And I think I was certainly younger than 13 then. I'm sure I was maybe 10, maybe 11. But I know I was really, really young and looking at the Hammer stuff. And I don't think they were classic Hammers then. They would just regurgitate whatever was out and whatever had the most blood in as well. I remember Christopher Lee with the wagon wheel pierced through his heart and all that, and blood everywhere. And you're like, this is brilliant. But it seemed really innocent then, and it didn't seem to bother anybody else. And my granddad didn't bother about buying it and giving it us. And I'd stare at the pictures forever going, I wonder how they did that, Whereas if it had been a hospital magazine of real things, people happening, you'd just be like, why am I looking at this?
Exactly.
I wouldn't be interested disappointed at all. I knew it was a good special effect.
Did you have like any access to any of the banned films of the day? Because I was born in 74, I think you were born in 70, so I managed to see The Evil Dead before it was taken off the shelves, but stuff like Texas Chainsaw and The Exorcist, it was years later before I could see those.
No, they were not banned when we were watching them. They weren't banned at all. And I remember them being banned because Brian gave us a big bin bag full of all the banned videos, and I had them at my dad's for years. Yeah. In fact, I've still got a few of them now. I think I've still got about 10 of them now. So I've still got the original Evil Dead, Contamination, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and a few more. I can't remember which ones I've got.
Police would have been knocking on your door back then, mate, if they'd have got a sniff of that.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't think he knew what to do with them. They just said get rid of them. And he wasn't going to set a fire in his backyard. He just had to get rid of them. So he gave them to me and Lee. What it really meant for him is that he couldn't keep them in his shop anymore and display them. And I remember him passing me the black plastic bag, and we just shared them. And I've managed to keep a few since then. But I've always I want to collect things and keep hold of them. All we were talking about Crass earlier. Still got all my Crass albums, and I must have moved house maybe 20 odd times over the years.
Did cinema play a big role in your love of films, or was it just being a teenager in the 80s you were constantly renting films, or did you have like a local cinema where you grew up?
We did have the cinema, but it was like a secondary cinema. So it was mostly VHSs, but the cinema there would show things like Repo Man or Kiss and the Phantom of the Park. We'd get all the absolute rubbish. And so we'd just go and watch anything that was there. And they'd be on like Fridays and Saturday nights. You just had to go and watch what was given to you, really. They never had the main films on. I think you'd have to go to Blackburn for that. And we never went to Blackburn. You just stay in Accrington. I don't think it even had a name. It wasn't part of a chain. It was just whoever put the stuff on. But it was quite a big cinema. I think it was an Odeon at the time. They knocked it down eventually anyway.
Because didn't you recently acquire an old cinema projector?
Yes, I did. I've given it to the Cinema Projection Trust in the end because I couldn't keep hold of it. It was going to go on a skip. It was from Weatherby Cinema. So I took it and I stored it at the office in Leeds. And then eventually that was being moved out and I moved the office and they couldn't store it anywhere. But, to be fair, it's giant and the fella at Prime Studios had looked after it for years in dry storage. So it couldn't stay there any longer. So I didn't know what to do and it had to go. And it was looking at the skip and I was trying to get all the people that would want it. And then I contacted these people at Dean Clough in Halifax. And they took all the old projectors from Bletchley Park because it was damp there and there was parts were rusting. And they've just got reams and reams of these old cinema projectors and Steinbeck editing things and all the stuff, all the equipment, and they're keeping it there and they're looking after it. And it's these old retired projectionists that fiddle around with them all day with these like overalls and they just keep them going. And it's an incredible place because it's in the bowels of Dean Clough. You've got to know where you go in and it's like nowhere else on this earth. It's like the Elephant's Graveyard. It's an incredible place.
I mean, there's so much history of that kind of stuff. It's upsetting when things just get thrown away or skipped. I mean, imagine the films which were passed through those projectors and the memories they created for people. You've got to save that stuff somewhere. Someone's got to look after it and preserve it, I think.
Yeah, well, they are, but they were made out of drop forged metal, so they were worth a fortune in scrap. So a lot of them did go that way, I think, but a lot of them have been saved. They've got some examples from over 100 years ago that are still working because they've kept them working and they make their own parts, these little micrometers and stuff, and they're absolutely brilliant. They're really superb chaps.
Was there anything or anyone that inspired you to think that a career in film or TV was something viable? Because for a long time, I think trying to make a living in a creative environment, it was viewed as unrealistic. And I think you're from a very working class background, so that perhaps heightened that as well. So was there anyone that kind of thought, no, this is something I can do? Do you remember any moment?
Yeah, I wanted to be involved in it, but it just didn't seem realistic. And at our school, you're either good at maths and you went to work in town, or you were good at anything else. I think I was good at metalwork and woodwork and technical drawing, so I was sent off straight into. There's loads of engineering places in Accrington. That's what I couldn't work out when I went to Bristol. I couldn't see where all the money was being made because in Accrington, there's engineering workshops everywhere. Worked in foundries and welding places and sheet metal workplaces and engineering places and mechanical places. So that's where people work, and then they spend the money in the town, and so you can see where the money's being made and where it's being spent and where people have the jobs and where, it all made sense to me. So when I went to Bristol Old Vic Theatre School eventually, I was just walking around the city going, well, where's all the money made? It just didn't make sense to me. I think that's coming from that working class background thing. But there was a chap called Martin Cosgriff that had taken on a couple of friends of mine into their acting course. But it was like you could do technical side, music or acting. And he launched so many careers. He was brilliant. Like Julie Hesmondhouse was in my year and Joe Alessi and people that went into theatre, people that are still working now very, very successfully. And he was brilliant. He was absolutely adamant that anybody from any background, from anywhere, no matter how far away from London or Manchester we were, could have a go at it. So he got us all into drama school. He was brilliant. brilliant. He was really good. He really, really worked on us and was saying that this is the first professional day of your life. You can't be late, and this is your breathing techniques, and this is what Shakespeare does, and this is how you break down a scene, and then let's work on emotion, let's work on throwing things away, and let's work on the practicalities of being an actor and performance. And it was brilliant. It was so good. And there must have been, when we were there was about 15, 20 people in every year. And then by the time I went to drama school, he said, because of X Factor, he said, the schools open the doors and we open ours and everybody floods in. And he says, right, now we're going to start on breathing techniques and Shakespeare. And he said, and they all leave again. You know what he said? The 30 people that are left really, really want to be good at what they want to be good at. They don't just want to be famous for the sake of it or become famous actors, because we didn't want, we just wanted to work as actors. I wanted to do theatre, I wanted to do anything. I wanted to just work as an actor and survive doing that. So he was brilliant at making sure that you knew that it was a career move, not to be famous, which is a ridiculous notion anyway.
Yeah, but that seems to be the people want to be famous before they realise what they want to do these days, which is such a shame.
Yeah, it is a shame, because where's the want to succeed at being good at something? That's what you should be aiming for. When I was a welder, I wanted to be a really good welder. Now I'm a director and I want to be a really, really good director. I want to study it and get right to it. But even now you see the amount of people that want to make short films and you go, oh, where's your camera plans and your shot list? How are you going to shoot it? What's your plan for that? And they go, oh, I don't know. Well, do you know about the line? Do you know the simple physics of filmmaking about crossing the line? Not really. I've not looked into that. I just really, really, really want to make a film. And you think, well, I really want to fly planes, but I'd have to learn to do it beforehand. And it's all there. It's all free. It's all on Google. It's all on YouTube. And there's books about it everywhere. Get your head in the books and learn about it. It's not enough to just want.
Got to put all that groundwork in. What is it to become a master of something or really good at something? Is it 10,000 hours you have to put in? Or...
Oh, is that right? Oh, I've not heard that one. Right.
Something like that, yeah. People just want it straight away now. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's rubbish.
Kind of in closing, Dominic, is there anyone from the horror industry, either from the past or maybe doing great things today, that you'd like to work with or would have loved to have worked with?
Well, that's a big question, really. I haven't really thought of that. I'm ploughing my own furrow, and there's loads of people, not even in horror, but in filmmaking fields. Like, he's dead now, but Brian Forbes is one of my favourite directors, and he's nothing to do with horror at all. He did Whistle Down the Wind and L-Shaped Room, Seance on a Wet Afternoon, and The Whisperers. Just a brilliant, brilliant director, and completely ignored now. But the way that he sets a tone for a whole film, and the way he sets the camera, and the way he planned it all out, and he's very clever with his shots, and then he's very simple when he has to be. And he's somebody I really study and really think he was really amazing,
right? And
completely ignored. So I really admire him. But there's special effects people all over the place that have got me really into horror. But I think Brian Forbes is the one director-wise that I really admire, that I kind of try and emulate a little bit.
Nice. And what's next on the cards for you after the whole Wolf Manor cycle's out the way?
Well, it usually takes about 2 or 3 years, and then usually something collapses and it takes a little bit longer to get something else going. So it's just keeping going, really. But I wrote a film that my wife's been directing in Serbia for 3 months. She got a decent budget for that. That'll be out later this year, but I can't really say too much about that, but that still has to be edited. So we're still kind of on with that, but that's very much my wife's thing, Joanne Mitchell. And then we'll see what happens after that, really. Hopefully I won't be as busy at Emmerdale later in the year. I know I'm very busy now, so I'm concentrating on that. And hopefully I'll just get something up and running again. I've got 2 or 3 things that I really, really desperately want to make. So it's just getting the funding for them and going around the same old knocking on doors routine again.
Well, I wish you the very best with Wolf Manor. It's great to see the reviews coming in so strong for it. So that will be out by the time this episode airs.
Great. And thank you so much for taking the time to let us be on your podcast as well. It's great. Thank you so much. It's a real honour. Thank you.
Massive thanks to Dominic Brunt for being a top guest, lovely bloke and all-round good guy right here on the Straight to Video podcast. The new film Wolf Manor is available on all digital platforms and also physical DVD, and you can connect with Dominic on Twitter at Dominic Brunt or at Wolf Manor Film. We have lots of things planned for the 80s Video Shop in Alfreton, Derbyshire this year, so please keep an eye on our social media at 80s Video Shop or through www.80svideoshop.co.uk. We're hoping to expand the shop a little with some cool new ideas and also make our screening room more readily available, so Chris and I look forward to maybe seeing you there soon. As always, thank you to everyone who continues to support the podcast through Patreon. It's become a bit of a lifeline for the show and means a lot to have all those cool people on board over at patreon.com/STVpod, but also anyone who shares words of encouragement and support are equally appreciated. That is all for today's show. Feels good to be back, and I look forward to speaking again soon.